A very good morning to all my dear students. I hope you all have revised the concept, and I'm so glad that we are meeting just the next day. And I hope you all have been enthusiastically preparing for the session, and you have also revised what we just did yesterday. So we have already completed your Unit 3 yesterday, and today we'll be starting with Unit 4, that is the Unpaid Seller. And before we proceed further, let me have some good morning wishes with all my students who are here right now. Saki, Shambhabi, and Ajitva. Okay, he's saying my name is pronounced as Ajit. All right, good morning, Ajit. And your email ID says it's Ajitva. All right, very nice. Good morning, Manisha, Vidhi, Muhammad Ali, Mayur, Shriba, Dhairya, Komalakshi, Chetan, Jeet, Sridhar, Vishnu, Bhumika, Krishma, Mansi, Sayam, Jay, and Jaspreet Kaur Abhinav. Very good morning, students. Mr. MD, Ehtasam. So this is good when you give me your, short names also along with your morning wishes. So it becomes a little more easier to take your name. Ms. Ganga, Nishant, Kushi. A very good morning, all of you students. And as promised, I hope you have revised your Unit 3 that we have just winded up yesterday, and a very small topic of Unit 3, that is acceptance, was left after the delivery of goods. So that is from where we'll be starting today's session. So as of now, I have not received any queries. That means you have very well revised your chapter and there's not much that you want to ask in that. So that's a great thing. So let's proceed further. Let's have a discussion upon the acceptance after the delivery, that from where we left yesterday. And then we'll be proceeding towards the most important chapter, that is the last chapter of your sale of goods, which is known as Unpaid Seller. All right. And if time permits, we'll take a few mock test question papers today itself. Or even if we don't get time, we will take those papers. Few of the papers we have already done in the previous lecture also. So we'll try to take up certain questions before we begin with the partnership. Good morning, Rahul, Anirudh, Deepak, Jatin, those who have just joined, Deepika, Sangeeta, Arpita. Very good morning, children. So your morning wishes and beautiful quotations that some of you write, it really charges me up and motivates me for a great lecture ahead. All right. So this is what we have just discussed yesterday, that how are the rules regarding delivery of goods, section 33 to 41. You can straight away refer to my notes regarding Unit 3 and Unit 4. By tonight, you will be able to see the notes for both the units together on the portal. So Unit 1 and 2 has already been uploaded along with few MCQs tests. So balance videos and presentations and notes you will get by tonight. So you can revise your content from those presentations, as well as the points that we have marked in the study material is very important. So I hope you all made proper notes of transfer of title, and you have also written down in proper points that we discussed yesterday. So now section 33 to 41, it is very beautifully given in the form of a flow chart in your study material. So you can remember all these points along with the notes that we discussed from the PPT yesterday. So this is what we have ended. So deterioration during transit, as promised, I told you I'll be taking up example 22 regarding iron rod. So let us just read it. We discussed yesterday that where the goods are delivered at a distant place means dur jane the, goods were transported. In such a case, if the goods get deteriorated, so you can write down the meaning of deterioration. It means if they get damaged, if something happened during the transit, then all the liability falls on the buyer, because we have already delivered the goods. The seller agrees to deliver as his own risk, but here once the transit, transportation charges and other problems, if any deterioration or damage occurs, buyer will be made liable. And what was one very important point? We have told that we have allowed him to examine the goods. So buyer's right to examine the goods should have been given to him, and then the goods have been transported. So what happened in this example was P sold the goods to Q. So P is the seller, Q is the buyer. A certain quantity of iron rods which were to be sent by proper vessel. Vessel means by a ship, the goods were to be transported. It got rusted before it reached the buyer. So you understand what is the meaning of getting rusted? So iron rods, इस पे rust लग गई, junk लग गया. So those who want to understand in Hindi, junk lag jana, kharab ho gaya, spoil ho gaya, rust lag gaya. So but the rust of the rod was so minimal that was not affecting the mercantile quality, and deterioration was not accidental to the transmission. Therefore, Q was bound to accept the goods. It says buyer cannot refuse the goods. Yes, before sending the goods, if the goods were already damaged, ho sakta hai ki iron rods already they were rusted one, they were not in good condition, then it is seller's responsibility and buyer has full right to refuse to accept the goods. But in this particular example number 22, the study is trying to teach you that where the damage is very minimal मतलब इतना कम था कि इससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा था, mercantile quality, that means the purpose for which the iron rods were to be used, they were still affordable to be used for that purpose. The deterioration was not because of transmission, it was just a very minimal thing that has come up. In such a cases, it was held Q was bound to accept the goods. Who is Q in our example? The buyer. Buyer cannot refuse the delivery. All right. So let's move ahead. This is what we have discussed. Yesterday also section 42 was left. So few of you have raised a query also, ma'am. Acceptance will be taken up. Definitely. We will not going to leave any of the topic before we proceed ahead. Karishma has sent a query. Ma'am, please explain sale by buyer obtaining the possession before the property. So you're asking one of the exceptions of title to transfer. So after this acceptance, just remind me, we'll go back to that particular topic. Good morning, Chandan, Patra, Samriti, Dipanshu, Disha, Anuradha, Soumya Begum, all those who have just joined. Good morning. Oh, that's very nice, Mr. Deepak. We are also glad to have you here. Khushi wants us to revise the effect of estoppel. So Khushi, today again, unpaid seller, we are going to talk about estoppel term. So pay attention at that time. All right. Okay. Section 30, subsection 2, implied condition is true as to voidable. So we'll take up all these queries in between, children. And somebody is asking, Samir Singh, from where can we get the notes? So Samir, on your admin query, where you're putting up sending these queries, you have those PDF notes which has been uploaded by the faculties. So you can get it, go and that particular link and you can download the presentations and notes. Okay. All right. So section 42, children, now it says the buyer is deemed to have given the acceptance. Now, the best part of your study material is it always gives you analysis. So what is the meaning of analysis? In today's unpaid seller, we'll be entirely paying attention towards the analysis of section. So एक होता है हमने section legal language में, अभी यहाँ पे उन्होंने क्या करा, section 42 को legal language में define कर दिया कि section 42 कहता क्या है. उसकी summary analysis means उसको briefly simple words में उन्होंने करके बता दिया. So wherever you find any difficulty in reading the law in the section language, you can simply jump up to the analysis so that you understand in a better way. Now here it is talking about once the delivery of goods has been made, don't you think it's buyer's duty to give his acceptance? Like the very first day Indian Contract Act, you must have learned that contract becomes complete after the offerer gives the offer and the offeree gives the acceptance, and then the contract comes into existence. Similarly, here, once we have sent the delivery of goods, how the acceptance takes place. So number one is the buyer intimates the seller that I have accepted the goods. So buyer sends an intimation that, okay, fine. Intimate karna means to give a notice. So where the buyer is giving a notice that I have accepted the goods, then it is said to be accepted the goods. Or the buyer does any act. So one is expressly he is telling you, and one is it is implied. It is implied. That means he is accepting the goods. He is doing anything which is inconsistent with the ownership. That means he has taken the goods in his custody. Or he retains the goods after the lapse of reasonable time. If you all remember when the goods were sent on approval, that guitar example, you did something, you retained the goods, you did not respond after a reasonable time expiry also. Then also it is assumed that the buyer has accepted the goods. Now, why this section becomes important? Because it says buyer is not bound to return the rejected goods. Say, for example, A was supposed to sell 100 bags of sugar to B by 10th of March. So A has sent the goods, B has said either he accepted the goods or he kept the goods with himself without refusing to accept. So it will be assumed that 10th of March, the goods reached the buyer and he has accepted them. But section 43 says where the goods were delivered and he refused to accept. Suppose buyer did not like the quantity of sugar that has come up and he said, I don't want to accept it. Having the right to do so means उसके पास इस चीज का हक भी है. He's not doing it unlawfully or illegally. There must be a valid reason for doing it. Buyer cannot just get up and say that I will not take your goods. You asked me to deliver those 100 packets of chocolates. I got them packed for you. I'm sending it to you. So you cannot just get up and say, ma'am, now I don't want it. So you have to give me a valid reason. So having the right to do so means उसके पास इस चीज का भी right होना चाहिए. तो अगर buyer के पास ये right है, then he can refuse to accept the goods. The only thing is he's not bound to return them to the seller. It is sufficient if he intimates to the seller that he refuses to accept. So on 10th of March, this Mr. B, he tells the seller that, look, your goods have come, but due to this reason, I don't want to accept them. Do you think the buyer needs to pick up the goods and go and give it back to the seller? Section 43 says he's not bound to return. Seller की सिरदर्दी, अभी तो मैंने goods accept ही नहीं करे. Ownership has not passed to me. So any time before accepting, the buyer has the right to refuse to accept the goods. In such a case, it is seller's responsibility to take his goods back. Buyer is not bound. So this is the important line over here. Buyer is not bound to return them to the seller. He only needs to inform to the seller. So section 43 in your own words, you can write it down. Buyer only needs to inform the seller if he refuses to accept the goods. He is nowhere bound to return them to the seller. All right. Now, what happens for the liability for getting or delivery of goods? Now, section 44 is again linked with your passing of risk, section 26. So it says where the seller is ready and willing to deliver the goods. So you asked me to make 10 chairs for your house and I've made those 10 chairs. The goods are in deliverable state and I have given the notice to the buyer. Look, Mr. Buyer, you can come and take the delivery of goods. Now, the buyer was supposed to come and pick up the goods by 10th of March. And today, if it is 15th of March and buyer does not within a reasonable time, means 15th of March aa gayi aaj, or buyer does not come to take the delivery of goods. Now, if the seller suffers any damages while taking reasonable care and custody of the goods, he can recover these liabilities from the buyer. It says if the buyer does not after such request take delivery of goods, then he means buyer. Who is the he over here? He means buyer. Buyer is liable to the seller for any loss which is occurring because of his neglect and refusal to take delivery. Remember delay in delivery of goods? I told you your 100 bags of sugar are liable. Please come and take them after 1 month. Buyer did not come up for 2 months. Now buyer will have to bear whatever loss is happening because I have been taking reasonable care of your goods. Now after 2 months, if the buyer is coming to take the goods, anything which damage has happened to the goods, buyer has the liability to be borne by the buyer. Clear? So now just the last topic which was left is also completed. So before we begin your unpaid seller, a child wanted to ask something about transfer of title to the goods. So let's have a look at the query that you were having. Somebody was asking if the ownership can be passed. Implied condition, Mr. Abdul is asking, in implied condition, you said true owner is entitled to recover the goods, but in voidable case, so very nice, Abdul. So implied condition as to title, we learned that the true owner will come and take the goods from you. But under the transfer to title, I told you there are 7 fixed exceptions, which I am not giving. Your dearest law is giving. वो law में लिखा गया है कि in cases में, even if you're not the owner, still you're passing a valid title. Now, in all those particular cases, especially that voidable one, what happens, the consequences, how the person with whom fraud has occurred, how he drags the other party to the court, that is a separate story. हमने तो सिर्फ इतना समझना है कि अगर मैंने चोरी की एक रिंग उठाई और वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट अभी वर्डेबल नहीं हुआ, इट इज स्टिल कंटिन्यूइंग. If I sell this ring further to someone else, that someone else is getting a valid title. What happens, how the true owner comes and jumps in and how the implied condition as to title is being applied, that is again a separate story. We are here understanding whether a non-owner can sell the goods or not. All right. So Manisha, we understand when we go to descriptive questions, although I have told you the 3 paragraphs, how you have to write, So any descriptive questions would come to you. Number one, you have to write the concerned provision. What is the provision to which this topic relates? Then you have to write your facts of the case. So facts of the case is again summary of the story which is given in the question, and then you write the conclusion. All right, so this is how you have to attempt. And when we go to that particular examination question, I will explain you once again. Thank you, Shiba. I also enjoy teaching all of you equally. So Miss Neha is asking, agar mercantable quality nahi rehti iron rod ki, definitely then implied condition has been breached as to mercantability. In that very case, Neha Yadav, the buyer had the right to reject the goods. So explain sale by buyer obtaining the possession. So Miss Karishma, that was the particular case where the buyer has got the goods. Now this one is related to your estoppel. So in front of the seller, if the buyer is selling the goods to another person, how the payment needs to be recovered and how the sale becomes valid. Once again, when we talk about the proper topic of estoppel, pay attention, your point will be covered there as well. Okay. Sakshi saying all sections are clear. That's nice. Buyer can replace those goods. Samir saying which one? In example, definitely Samir saying if the goods were not of mercantable quality, then the buyer had the right to reject the goods. Somebody is still asking about the fifth point. So let me just take you back in the study material, because if you still keep on having doubts, then the fun just goes back. Yes. Somebody wants to understand. So this is the effect of estoppel, which I just now told you that we'll be covering once again. So fifth point, somebody is asking, example number 18. It says A took the car to be on this condition that monthly installments would be paid. So now children, I told you yesterday, section 30, subsection 2, all those who are asking, Bacha, that is an exception to this particular exception. I told you that buyer without having the ownership also can sell the goods. So if I've taken the goods, there is something which still needs to be done. The payments are still need to be made. Even if I then transfer the document of title to the goods, the new buyer will get a good title. So what were the conditions? We said that the buyer with the consent of the seller, this line is very important. So it says only with the consent of the seller, if he is in the possession of the goods, then he may sell, pledge and dispose of the goods to third party. If the third party is not having any notice of right of lien, तभी मैं कह रही हूँ अभी लियन हम अभी आज पढ़ेंगे ना तो आपको और ज्यादा क्लियर हो जाएगा. बट अभी के लिए जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड दैट द बायर कैन स्टिल dispose of the goods if he is holding the goods with the consent of the seller, but the only exception was hire purchase. So this example number 18, don't get confused. This is your hire purchase transaction, which does not allow the buyer to sell the goods until last installment is paid. Okay. I hope now it's clear. Yes, Sarthak, that's true. Raghuvardhan, welcome. Good morning once again. How to remember all these sections? Mr. Dhairya Verma, it is not at all compulsory for all of you to write these sections in CA Foundation, but never write a wrong section. If you can remember a section, you can write it. Children, if you don't remember the section, then also it's fine. So let's proceed to the chapter of unpaid seller. Most of your doubts will again get answered once we are done with the entire unit 4 as well. So here we are going to understand who is an unpaid seller. The unpaid seller, children, has two different types of rights. One is rights against the goods and one is rights against the buyer. Now, what is the meaning of unpaid? Unpaid in itself is telling you that I sold you my product and you have not made me the payment. So wherein 5,000 rupees was to be paid to the seller and the buyer just paid 3,000 rupees. So don't you think balance 2,000 is still pending? So law says either whole of the price or any 1 rupee also, if it is pending to be paid to the buyer, to the seller, he becomes an unpaid seller. We'll just do the legal definition in a while, but let us first understand what we have to cover in this chapter. So it says two types of rights have been given to the person who becomes an unpaid seller. He has the rights against the goods. So now I am selling you the goods. You are not making me the payment. So I have particular 3 types of rights against my goods. That is, I can either retain my goods in my possession, I can ask the transit guy, transporter, to stop and bring my goods back. And I even have the right to resell my goods. Why? Because if my payment is not coming, I will not give you the goods. Apart from that, second category is rights against the buyer. The seller even have the right to sue the buyer. I can even take this buyer to the court to recover my price money. So this is what we are going to understand, how I'm going to use my rights for the goods, how I can drag the buyer to the court. This is what Unit 4 explains you. Also, there are certain remedies available to the buyer against the seller. Now, child, your sale of goods, I told you at the very first day that sale of goods in partnership were removed from the Indian Contract Act and separate acts were made. Yaad hai na aapko? So that means sale of goods was also part of Indian Contract Act. So how is Indian Contract Act laid? First, we have offer, acceptance, we have all the essential elements of valid contract. Sale of goods may be same hai, buyer hai, seller hai, all the essential elements are present and contract of sale is made. Then in the previous session, we understood how the performance of contract happens. Similarly, the way it was happening in a contract act, delivery of goods was made, reasonable time, money, hour, ये सब आपने contract में भी पढ़ा. वही replication हमने sale of goods से related भी करी कि performance of contract हुआ, delivery of goods आई, buyer ने acceptance दिया and contract was complete. Now this unpaid seller chapter is actually your breach of contract. याद है आपको contract act में last chapter क्या था? Breach of contract. This unit 4 is actually talking about the breach of contract. Means if buyer does not take the goods, what action seller will take? If buyer fails to pay for the goods, what action seller is going to take? Or if the seller does not deliver the goods, what action the buyer is going to take? All this chapter revolves around breach of contract. So if you remember breach over there, breach meaning was failing to fulfill the promise. मैंने आपको हिंदी में भी बताया था, धोखा दे देना. आपने मुझे promise करा 100 bags of sugar deliver करोगे, seller refused, I will not deliver you. What are the actions to be taken by the buyer? Fourth topic, remedies of the buyer. I have delivered you the 100 bags of sugar. You as a buyer failed to pay my money. What actions I can take? I have two type of actions. I can either take the rights against my goods or I will drag you to the court. I will drag the buyer to the court. So the unpaid seller का मतलब जो है, वो जो पूरा चैप्टर है, वो आपका breach of contract की बात करता है. Breach of contract में you understood under Indian Contract Act that damages needs to be paid. Hadley versus Baxendale, a very important case law was discussed over there. So how the damages are to be claimed, what are the nominal damages, what are the ordinary damages, all that replicate of Indian Contract Act becomes applicable when we talk about damages. But only points that you need to understand, because you never know, you don't know that how the breach happens in sale of goods. This is what we are going to understand in this chapter. So the most important thing is the definition of unpaid seller. Now, examiner can straight away give you a 2 marks or 4 marks question. Explain what are the who is the unpaid seller and provisions related to that. In that case, you simply define the unpaid seller. What are the rights available to him? Give an example, and these are the rights which are available to him. All right. So this buyer is giving you a bright smile over here, and this handshake is telling you that we have made a contract. Now, look, Mr. Buyer, if you don't pay my money, I'll just pull your hand and I'll drag you to the court. So, वो अभी तो हंस रहे हैं कि हाँ जी contract हो गया, but rights of unpaid seller में I'll teach you how we can take him to the court also. Okay, so let us first understand who is an unpaid seller. So, the person, if the whole of the price has not been paid or tendered, and the seller has an immediate right of action for the price. So simple meaning, जहां पे आपने मेरा पैसा नहीं दिया, I become an unpaid seller. A sent 100 bags of sugar to Mr. B. B was to pay 10,000 for that. B only paid rupees 9,000. So for the balance 1,000, the seller becomes an unpaid seller. So this is your cash payment, the first case where I become an unpaid seller. Second is where a bill of exchange or other negotiable instrument has been received as conditional payment and it got dishonored. So this Mr. A said that, look, I'm giving you a check of rupees 10,000. You give me 100 bags of sugar and you get the check payment from my banker. And when this innocent seller who went to the banker and isne wo check lagwaya and it got dishonor, you know the meaning of dishonor? That means there was no amount in B's bank account. He was not having any bank balance and he has given you a fraud check. So here I am again not received my money. एक के साथ तो नुकसान हो गया ना बच्चा, उसको तो पैसे चाहिए. आपके बैंक में पैसा है नहीं है, मेरा चेक डिसऑनर हुआ है, I become unpaid seller. Now I have the rights against this B. I will either take my goods back or I will drag him to the court. What rights are available, we'll understand later on. First, we should know how you become an unpaid seller. So there are two broad categories. Number one, in case of cash payment, if the cash is not paid to the seller, he becomes the unpaid seller immediately. Those who keep asking about credit sales, so let's take an example about credit sale also. Say for example, I made a sale on 1st of the month and the payment, I said that, okay, you can make me the payment by 30th of this month. So till 30th of this month, I will not become unpaid seller because I've given you the credit period. But after 30th of the month, if you don't pay my amount, I become unpaid seller. So in the first category, whole of the price has not been paid or tendered. Tendered means ki paisa mera nahi pay kara. So in both the cases, whether you have paid the amount, not paid the amount in cash sales or not paid the amount in credit sale, I become an unpaid seller. And what is the second category? I told you children, negotiable instrument is part of your CA inter, but अभी के लिए हम सिर्फ इतना समझते हैं कि अगर मैंने आपके ऊपर एक बिल रेज करा, बिल ऑफ एक्सचेंज रेज करा, आपने मुझे बताया था मैम हम अकाउंट्स में पढ़ भी चुके हैं, तो आपको आता है बिल ऑफ एक्सचेंज. So there are three different instruments that we used, either a bill of exchange for making a payment or a promissory note, or check is the simplest, which every child, even in 11th, 12th, you have understood what is the meaning of a check. So if I'm making you the payment as check, so there was a condition. Remember, in the previous chapter, I told you where the check needs to be paid, there is an implied condition that the payment should get clear. So there is an uncertainty that check might get dishonored. So now if my check gets dishonored, I become an unpaid seller. Clear hai? So two categories we have discussed wherein you become an unpaid seller. So let's see the example. A sold certain goods to B for rupees 50,000. Now, can you see why money is being shown? Because by now all my children know that monetary consideration is must in sale of goods. If I say that I'm giving you goods and you give me goods in exchange, can it be a valid contract of sale? Let me see how many of you are sitting awake. If I tell you, thank you, Sandeep Kumar. All right. So can you tell me, let me see how many of you are paying attention. What is the meaning of inconsistent with the ownership? Unpaid payment is not made by the buyer, just in rem, just in personam. So mate, we'll take that in between. Nimish Agarwal, very valid question. So whether ownership has been passed or not has nothing to do with this chapter. I am just trying to see if my payment is not paid. In that case, even if the ownership of the goods has been passed, I can still exercise my right to lien on the goods or maybe right to stoppage in transit or whatever rights I'm going to teach you in a while. I become an unpaid seller. So even if I've sold you the goods, the ownership has been passed. So in this particular example, I'm telling you A is selling certain goods to B for 50,000 and B is only paying 40,000 and he fails to pay the balance amount. I become unpaid seller immediately. But before that, I've asked you a question. I said, if I exchange the goods for goods, will it be a contract of sale? Yes, Simriti, check gets dishonor means check bounce ho jana. That's correct. So children, you're not answering me. Breach means breaking. Shambhavi is right. I'm asking, is it a valid contract of sale wherein I sell you the goods in exchange of goods? No, ma'am. Correct answer, because that's a barter system. It will be treated as barter system. Yajit Sen, Dhairya, Lakshmi, all of you are correct. Sarthak Agarwal, Vidya, Jeet, very nice. Why? Because it becomes a barter system. Yes, Sangeeta, Jayanti, very good. Vidhi. And Simriti Nanda is saying it's crystal clear. So that's good. So now you all know that monetary consideration is must. So in between, we just had a small MCQ also. Those who were saying in between MCQs. Okay. So Mohammed, we are just coming off the dishonor example only. So you have understood the first example and you have answered me very correctly. Now the second example, it says P sold the goods to R for 60,000 and received a check. So here the check payment is happening. Here the payment was in cash. That is also valid in the sale of goods. But if the cash is not paid fully, I become unpaid seller. Can I make the payment through check? Yes, ma'am. You just told us bills of exchange, promissory note, check can also be used for making the payments. And on presentation of the check, it was dishonored by the bank. So what happened? The check got bounced and my payment was not made. Then also I become an unpaid seller. Now comes your mystery of unpaid seller. Ma'am, फिर होता क्या है? अभी धीरे धीरे चलेंगे. अभी तो आपने सिर्फ ये समझा कि हम unpaid seller कैसे बने. Cash sales, credit sales, both are clear where the payment is not made after the period of credit is given. And the third category of bill of exchange is also clear. Once my check or bill get dishonored, I become an unpaid seller. Okay. So, Sarvesh, if you're giving any discounts and any bad debts are happening, that is a separate story. Where the payment is not being made, where he has decided not to give you the balance amount, then he becomes the unpaid seller. How you mark bad debts in your books, that is your chapter of accounts that you have to understand. Okay. So now are the rights of an unpaid seller. Number one, I have certain right against my goods. Now this beautiful drawer picture is trying to tell you something. Aren't you wondering that why ma'am has shown a picture of drawer? Am I selling you this drawer? No. I have hidden the goods in this drawer. It says seller will not give you the goods. You break the promise. You said you will give me 10,000 rupees for the bags of sugar. Now I have certain rights against my goods. I will just pick them and I will lock them in the record. I will keep them in my custody. Seller is now not going to give you the goods. इसका मतलब ये फोटो का मतलब ये कीज जो मैंने छुपा कर रखी है अपने गुड्स आपको दिखाने के लिए ताकि आपको अच्छे से समझ आ जाए कि दिस इज द राइट्स व्हिच आर अवेलेबल टू द अनपेड सेलर दैट इफ यू डू नॉट पे माय प्राइस आई विल नॉट गिव यू द गुड्स सिंपल you did not give me the payment I will not give you the goods and what will I do with the goods I will pick up my locker and I will hide them and I'll keep the keys to myself that means मैंने goods को छुपा दिया अब मैं आपको goods नहीं देने वाली But ये right मैंने कैसे exercise करना है? There are 3 different rights which have been given to an unpaid seller. Again, it is divided into 2 different categories. Number 1, where the property has passed. अब आपका आ गया ownership पूछ रहे थे ना आप लोग कि मैम ownership pass हुई है या नहीं? So I was telling you step by step we'll be going. If the ownership has been passed, it is known as contract of sale. If the ownership has not been passed, it is known as, yes, you are correct. मुझे पता है आपको आता है. It is known as agreement to sell. Means I promised you, remember the day 1 example where you came to buy these Skechers shoes and I told you, Bacha, I don't have number 5, I have number 7. And now I have manufactured all those shoes of size 5, number 5. And now agreement to sell was made. Now if you fail to pay my price, then also I have the right to lien on the goods. So there can be 2 different categories where the rights can be exercised. First, I will tell you what all rights are available. Then I will tell you in the different categories. So it says the rights of the unpaid seller against the goods. So this is the first category of rights. What rights are available against the goods? Number 1 category where the property in the goods has been passed to the buyer. Means you came to my shop, you purchased the chocolates, you paid the price, but you have not paid the price. That's why I've become unpaid seller. Now, what can I do when I become unpaid seller? I have the right to lien on the goods. I have the right to stoppage in transit. And I have the right to resale. Ma'am, what is lien, stoppage in transit? I have to explain you. अभी तो हम सिर्फ ये समझ रहे हैं कि मेरे पास कौन कौन से rights हैं. वो rights क्या होते हैं मैं अभी आपको करवाऊंगी. तो in the case of sale, I have 3 rights. In the case of agreement to sell, I have 4 rights. Withholding delivery, right to lien, right to stoppage in transit, and right to resale. Now, these 3 rights are same. The only difference is right to withhold delivery. So, मैं आपको अभी समझा रही थी where I manufactured the 5 size shoe number for you and buyer tomorrow refused to come and take the goods or he refused to pay me the price. So, me as a seller, I have the right to withhold the delivery. I will not give you the goods. I will withhold delivery means अपने पास delivery of goods को रुकवा लेना, goods को deliver ना होने देना. I have the right to stop the goods from getting delivered to the buyer. So this is the additional right where an agreement to sell has been made and the buyer is not making the price. That means the property in the goods has not passed to the buyer. I have additional right of withholding delivery. But all these three rights, whether you have become the owner or you have still not become the owner, seller has the right to lien on the goods, right to stoppage in transit, right to resale. So somebody who was asking, ma'am, does the seller still becomes unpaid if the ownership has been transferred? तो बच्चा चाहे ownership transfer हुई, चाहे future goods थे, चाहे agreement to sell थी, buyer ने मेरा price देने से मना करा तो मैं unpaid seller बन जाऊंगी और जब मैं unpaid seller बन जाऊंगी, I can exercise all these kind of rights against my goods. Clear हो गया? And there are certain rights which are available against the buyer. So he can either use his rights. What are these rights against the buyer? I can drag him to the court. So that is a separate story. I will explain you. First, let us understand what are the rights available against the goods. So right of unpaid seller against the buyer. Seller's lien on the good. Now starts your first story, first thing, that is what is the right to lien on the goods. It says right to retain the possession until my payment is made. So I promised to sell you the goods worth rupees 6,000 and you just paid me 5,000 rupees. Now law says for the balance 1,000, I can retain the possession, means I am not going to give you the balanced goods. I will not give the goods unless and until my 1,000 rupees are also paid to me. All right. So if the buyer does not make you the payment, the first right that the seller is having is right to lien. Right to lien means that I can retain the possession. I just showed you a picture where I can put the goods in my custody. I can lock them and I will not allow the buyer to come and take the goods. Now, again, there are three categories we have just understood. Number one, where the cash sales are made, where the goods are stored without any period of credit. So I'm not giving you any credit period. You simply have to come and take the goods and you have to pay me the price. So if you don't pay me the price, I will keep the goods. I will exercise my right to lien on the goods and I will not give you the goods. Second is goods are sold on credit. So I told you on 1st Jan, I'm making the sale and you must make me the payment by 15 Jan. So from this period of 1st to 15 Jan, I cannot exercise my right to lien because this is the credit period that I have given. Only after the expiry of the credit period. So after 15 January, if the buyer does not make me the payment, then I have the right to exercise the right to lien on the goods. That means I will keep the goods to myself and I can refuse to give it to the buyer. What is the third category? जो आपको थोड़ी मुश्किल लगती है. Buyer becomes insolvent. What is the meaning of insolvent? Remember we did it in unit 1, mercantile agent, insolvency, ये सब हमने करे हुए हैं first chapter में definition. So मैं आपको बता देती हूँ. Insolvent, once again, the person who is unable to make the payment. Ceases to pay means he is not able. Ceases को लिख लो, unable to pay. So where you're not able to pay your debts, you are हिंदी में कहते हैं insolvent को दिवालिया निकल जाना, means आपके पास इतने पैसे नहीं है कि आप अपनी liabilities को pay off कर सको. So sometime a person who has been declared insolvent by court, he does not become insolvent on his own. Say for example, he has taken a lot of loan from the market and now he is not having, his business is not running very well. So court declares such person as insolvent. And what happens then? His entire property lies with the official liquidator, and official liquidator will decide how the payment has to be made to his debtors. Now what happens if it says a buyer becomes insolvent? अगर उसके पास पैसे नहीं हैं, then the seller has the right to exercise lien on the goods. Obviously seller will not give you the goods ना. अब तो उसे पता लग गया कि मेरे पैसे ही नहीं आएंगे. तो अगर अभी उसने goods नहीं दिए थे, right to lien can be exercised only if I have not parted with the goods. The basic condition is very important to understand. See, for example, I have already sent the goods in transit. I have already given it to the transporter. Can I exercise my right to lien then? The answer is no. Why? Because in order to exercise the right to lien, I should have the goods in my custody. So in these three basic cases, until the payment of the goods is not made, the seller has the right to retain the possession. What word I'm using over here is right to retain the possession. Retain karna means apne paas rakh lena. I will keep the goods to myself and I will not give to the buyer. Why? Because in cash sales, he has not paid my cash. In credit sale, credit period has expired, he has not made my payment. Or if the buyer has become insolvent, I will not give him my goods. This is what is the meaning of seller's lien on the goods. This is how we can exercise the lien on the goods. Now what happens with the part delivery of the goods? It says seller can exercise his right to lien on the remaining goods if he has made the part delivery. Now, sometimes children, he has delivered the goods. Sometime you remember part delivery, where I told you 1,000 bags of sugar was to be sent from seller to buyer. And I said, okay, I'm sending 600 bags first and then 400 bags will be coming. So now if the buyer, there we learned about the delivery of goods. If the buyer has accepted the 600 bags, he is bound to accept the 400 bags also. But now if the buyer, after the part delivery, he fails to make the payment, I have the right to retain the balance goods. I will not give you the balance goods. If part delivery has already made, unless that implies the waive of lien, means जो 600 bags तो मैंने आपको दे दी है ना, उस पे तो अब मैं lien नहीं exercise कर सकती. उस पे मैं कौन सा right exercise कर सकती हूँ? That is the second right which we are going to understand. But as of now, it is just simply telling you that the seller's lien in case of part delivery, once the seller has sent you few of the goods, like in our previous example, if 600 bags you've already received, now if the buyer refuses to make the payment, I have the right to lien on the balance 400 bags. So I still can exercise my right to lien in case of part delivery for the goods whose delivery is still pending. Now, this is something very, very important. Seller's lien, termination of lien. When does the right to lien comes to an end? When does it comes to an end? I just told you, if I have loaded the goods, deliver the goods to a carrier or bailee. Once I have loaded the goods with the transporter in the truck to give it to the bailee or the buyer, I lose my right to lien. So now my question to all my dear children are that if I loses my right to lien, do I still have any right which I can exercise? And what is that right? So it says the right to lien comes to an end. What is meant by lien? Lakshmi, we are doing that only. Lien means to have a control on the goods. I will not part with my goods. So you can exercise a control on your goods. The seller will not give you the goods until you will make the payment. Okay? So I told you that we can exercise the right. Yes, balance amount is, Nikhil, we will talk about that also, how the balance amount occurs. Somebody is asking about insolvency also. Children, I hope you're listening when I'm talking. Okay, I'm not reading your queries as of now. I'm just asking you that once my lien comes to an end, Neha Yadav, the example of right to lien is, I sent you my goods, and you said that wherein I'm just telling you the cash sales example, I sold you the goods for 50,000 and you just paid me 40,000. The goods are still lying with me and you did not pay me the payment. I will not give you the goods now. Simple. I will retain the possession with myself means I will not part with the goods where the seller is not ready to leave the goods because he has refused to give the payment. Or another example I just gave you where A promised to sell 10,000 rupees goods to B and B became insolvent. Now, will you go and sell those goods to B? No, you will exercise the right to lien on the goods. You will not give the goods to buyer because he has become insolvent. Now, my question to you is, Mr. Ajitav is the first one to answer it correctly. And lien examples we will also do from the study material, so don't worry. Okay, and only one child has sent me the correct answer, and Sarthak Agarwal is the second one to give it. So I told you, Nimish Agarwal has also given the answer. So I told you, if I have put the goods for the delivery to the carrier, my right to lien will come to an end. So हमने अभी समझा कि मेरे पास right to lien है, but जैसे ही मैंने गुड्स के साथ पार्ट कर दिया, मीन्स आई हैव गिवन इट टू समवन फॉर डिलीवरी, आई लूज माई राइट टू लियन. सो द चिल्ड्रन हु हैव आंसर्ड मी व्हाट राइट आई कैन एक्सरसाइज, दैट्स एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट. नाउ आई कैन एक्सरसाइज माई राइट टू stoppage in transit. All right, I get the right to exercise my stoppage in transit. Children, those who are still sending queries, I would request just listen to this last topic of termination of lien, and then again I will take your queries. So, but otherwise you'll miss upon this important topic also. So it says, now I told you that if you're not making me payment, I will exercise my right to lien. Right to lien का मतलब होता है कि goods अपने पास रख लेना. Seller is not going to part with the goods. He will retain the possession. He will lock the goods in the drawer and he will keep the keys to himself. He will not give you the goods till the time you have made the payment. Simple मतलब है अपने पास कब्जे करके रख लेना, अब मैं आपको goods नहीं दूं. Lien means having a control of the goods. But now we are understanding the 4 points where the right to lien comes to an end. Now, in the first point, I taught you that once the goods have been given to the transporter, my right to lien comes to an end. Why? Because I don't have good goods with me. Now, if the buyer fails to pay me the payment, I can exercise the right to stoppage in transit. What is the right to stoppage in transit? We will do it in a while. Here we are just understanding my right to lien has come to an end. Second point. But within the first point, children, don't you remember where the seller has reserved the right to disposal of goods, section 25? So number one condition where we are delivering the goods to carrier, we are assuming that this was an unconditional appropriation and seller has not reserved the right to disposal. Wherein the seller has only reserved, section 25 becomes applicable. There the seller still has the right to exercise the lien on the goods. Because he is reserving, he is controlling his reservation of the disposal of goods. In that case, it will be counted as conditional appropriation. Then the seller can still take the goods back in his custody. So write down under point number A, we are assuming it is an unconditional appropriation of goods. Means once you have given the goods to the carrier, it is assumed that the carrier is holding the goods as the buyer's agent. So I lose my right to exercise lien on the goods. Second point is where the buyer or agent has lawfully obtained the goods. So you sent the goods on 1st of January and the goods were to be received by the buyer on 3rd of January. Now 3rd of January has come and the buyer has already lawfully means illegally नहीं, legal तरीके से 3rd January को उसने अपने goods ले लिए. So now since the buyer is only having the goods, can you exercise the right to lien? The answer is no, because buyer has lawfully obtained the delivery of goods. Now you cannot take the goods back from him. You still have the rights, further rights that you can use. You know, child sometimes gets confused. Ma'am, आप कह रहे हो कि उसने payment नहीं करी, अब हम goods भी नहीं ले सकते, तो हम क्या कर सकते हैं? वो अगले वाले rights है, हम right to resale कर सकते हैं, हम right to stoppage in transit कर सकते हैं. बट अभी हम 4 केसेस में समझ रहे हैं कि हमारा राइट टू लियन कब एंड हो जाता है. सो वेयर goods have been given to a carrier, my right to lien comes to an end, or the buyer has obtained the delivery of the goods, then also my right to lien comes to an end. By waiver, he himself decided that I want to give up my right to lien. So if the seller himself has given up, waived off his right to lien, anyways he cannot exercise his right to lien. So waiver means to give up. He has himself decided I will not be exercising my right to lien. Fourth is by estoppel. Now you all have been asking the meaning of estoppel. Here comes your example for estoppel. Estoppel means by your conduct or behavior. Now children, if the buyer, I was saying section 30 subsection 2, now again your estoppel by conduct or behavior term has come. Let us understand how the seller's lien comes to an end. It says if the buyer, so there is a seller A and there is a buyer, seller is selling the goods to buyer B. So now this Mr. B who is standing in the shop of A and A is selling him 100 bags of sugar. So now this Mr. B in front of Mr. A, that is with the consent of Mr. A, sell these 100 bags of sugar to Mr. C. And A did not stop him. Now the rule of estoppel will become applicable A cannot exercise his right to lien on the goods. Why? Because B has further sold the goods to a new buyer. Now A cannot be stopped from objecting by saying that the goods belong to me, and if he has not exercised his right to lien on the goods earlier, he cannot exercise his right to lien on the goods now also. So had A stopped B at that time, then it would have been different story. But आप एक दुकानदार के पास गए, आपने सामान खरीदा, before making the payment, in front of that shopkeeper, you sold the stuff to third party. So now if this third party has purchased in good faith, this seller loses his right to lien on the goods. Why? Because the goods are no longer in his custody. They have gone to third party. So this is known as the meaning of estoppel. So law says where any goods are being sold by the buyer further to another new buyer before making the payment. So had B made the payment? No, B did not make the payment. A is still the unpaid seller. But he cannot exercise his right to lien. Why, ma'am? Because B has already sold the goods to C. Rule of estoppel will become applicable since A did not stop him earlier. Now he cannot exercise his right to lien. However, if B still does not make the payment, A उसको कोर्ट में तो लेकर जा ही सकता है, बाकी राइट्स एक्सरसाइज कर सकता है, but right to lien खत्म है. So in these four cases, once you have delivered the goods to the carrier, once the buyer has obtained the goods, or by estoppel he has given it to third party, by waiver seller himself gave up his right to lien, then his right to lien on the goods come to an end. Now this small line which is written as note, which is given in your study material also, this line really bothers you and many of you send me queries for that. So now listen carefully. It says unpaid seller does not lose his right to lien if he has obtained a decree for the price. Now sometimes decree means court's order. So हो सकता है कोई केस चल रहा हो, कोई झगड़ा चल रहा हो for the price of the goods. And me as a seller, I have taken the order from the court for the particular price money, for the price of the goods. So it says, law says that even if this court's order I have obtained for the price of the good, this will not affect his right to lien. I can still exercise my right to lien on the goods. So even if some case is going on and there is a fight happening between the buyer and seller to determine the price of the goods, and if the seller has obtained a decree, means or has obtained the order from the court से हमने कोई order लिया हुआ है for the prize money, then also the seller can exercise his right to lien. But when he will exercise his right to lien, if he has become an unpaid seller, if his payment is not made, he has the right to lien on the goods. All right. So here comes your example. A sold the goods to B for 50,000 and he allowed him 1 month credit. So all those who were asking for the examples of unpaid seller's lien, how will he exercise a right to lien? It says A is selling certain goods to B for rupees 50,000 and now I'm giving you 1 month credit period. And within that credit period, he became insolvent. ये देख रहे हो आप, खाली बटुआ दिखा रहा है आपको, पैसे नहीं है मेरे पास. Insolvent declare हो गया ना, he doesn't have money. So now, my dear child, those who were Aneha Yadav, you tell me now, she was the one who was asking that, ma'am, I do not understand what is the meaning of right to lien. So, bacha, if now will A still give the goods to B? Yes or no? All of you have to answer me in this first example. Once you have come to know that the credit period has expired, will you still give the goods to B? Bhumika, very good, where you have written without reserving the right to disposal. That is correct. Yes, Sakshi, obviously the goods has to be in the custody of the seller, then only he can exercise the right to lien. Vijay Gaurav, that's correct. Okay, you have to give me the answer that A sold the goods for rupees 50,000 and he gave him 1 month credit period, means उसने कहा कि 1 महीने के अंदर अंदर मुझे payment कर देना. So for that 1 month, I have given the credit period. I cannot take any action. But he became insolvent. He's showing you the blank, empty purse. He doesn't have money to pay. Will A sell the goods to B? Yes or no? All those who have sent the answer no, that's absolutely correct. That means you have understood. So applause for all of you. Mr. Rimhim, Yatiraj, Sarvesh, Shridhi, Neha, that's correct. No. Harshita, Aryan Agarwal, Mayur, Arpita, Sandeep, Manisha, Sanyam Jain, Kushik, Chetan. Very good. So all of you have said no, ma'am. So that is the correct answer, because now you have come to know that he is not giving you your payment. He will not be able to give your payment क्योंकि insolvent declare हो गया. अब तो कोई सवाल ही नहीं पैदा होता. तो मुश्किल आएगी पैसा लेने में, वसूल करने में. तो आप goods दोगे ही नहीं. So which right are you going to exercise now on the goods? Tell me that also. Seller A will exercise the right to lien on the goods, which means he will not part with the goods. He will not give it to Mr. B. But another thing, it said A sold the car to B for rupees 1 lakh and delivered the car to the railway authorities. Can you see? He's loading this car. He's sending this car to Mr. B. Now, if the buyer does not make me the payment, can I exercise the right to lien on the goods? The answer is no, because my right to lien has come to an end, because the car on which I had to exercise the right to lien, that has gone away. वो तो मैंने अब चढ़वा दी ना, ट्रेन में जा रही है आपके सामने, तो मेरे पास goods है ही नहीं. So once I have parted with the goods, once I have given the goods to the railway authorities, once I have given away the goods legally to the buyer, I cannot exercise my right to lien. All right, very good. Hussain, Soumya, Chandan, Jaspreet, Ravi, Nikhil, Piyush, Sarthak, Nimish, all of you, very well done, children. You're all sending correct answers. So difficult to make all the names. Akshneel, Jayanti, Bhumika, Dhairya, Vidya, all of you are correct. Yes, Shiba can say now he can exercise the right to stoppage in transit. Excellent. So now my right to lien has come to an end, but I still have a right, that is right of stoppage in transit, which I'll just explain in a while. Clear हो गया. अब right to lien सबको clear है with the help of these examples, and you have to learn it. There is no escape route. अगर आप बोले law मैम बिना learn करे पास हो जाएगी, तो वो तो है ही नहीं possible. See, on Sundays you are studying, you are making so much an effort, so revising has to be done. Once you revise it, it becomes feed in your mind. Nobody can take it away from you. Now, I think this is your right of stoppage in transit. 1 hour is already over. Let's take a small pause over here, and then we'll complete the balance rights. Let's take a small break. All right, students, welcome back. So I have just gone through all your queries. So Karthik and Pooja and others were asking about the meaning of prima facie in simple words, child. When I say that the risk prima facie passes with the passing of property, का मतलब ये है कि जब मैंने goods आपको दे दिए, you become the owner. That means prima facie means apparently. This is what is visible in the eyes of law, that whosoever is the owner of the goods is liable to bear the risk or loss. So when I sell you the goods, you paid me the price, you become the owner, then it is said that you are now the owner and you will have to bear the risk of other things as well, of all these related to goods. Okay, thank you, Jaspreet Kaur and Simriti and others were writing, ma'am, it's crystal clear. I'm so glad to read that. Good, Jyoti. All right, so I hope you have understood the meaning of prima facie. Pooja Swami is asking, when the goods are shipped through railway receipt, the seller has the authority to reserving the right. So child, reservation of right to disposal, section 25 specifically becomes applicable. It means it's a conditional appropriation of goods. Seller has the right to take back the goods anytime. But where we just understood he is giving the goods to a carrier, to a bailee, that is the unconditional appropriation. Section 23, subsection 1, subsection 2 becomes applicable. That means the seller has now given the goods to the buyer's agent. He cannot exercise his right to leave. What happens when the document of title to goods get transferred? Section 53-54 में अभी हम पढ़ेंगे. अभी मैं आपको समझाऊंगी कि कहां पे हमारा right to lien and stoppage in transit will come to an end if there is any sub-sale made by the buyer. Okay. Neha Yadav, that's absolutely correct. Only when he is having the goods in his custody, then only he can exercise the right to lien. So now you have clearly understood. Once I have given the goods only to the carrier, I can use my second right, that is right to stoppage in transit. Sarvesh is asking the termination of lien second point. Second point says where the buyer lawfully obtains the possession. So now I said that I will be selling you the goods on 1st of January. Till 3rd of January, the buyer was supposed to come and pick up the goods. Whether it is an agreement to sell or sale, both the cases I can exercise the right to lien. Clear? Now, till 3rd of January, the buyer has not come. And if I come to know that he cannot make me the payment, my right to lien is still available because the goods are lying with me, right? But now on 3rd of January, this Mr. Buyer B came to my shop. He has taken the goods away from me. You tell me, can you exercise the right to lien on the goods? So you have to answer me, Sarvesh, once the buyer has taken the goods away from me, he has obtained legally the possession of the goods, the entire contract of sale has been completed. Can I exercise my right to lien? The answer is no, I cannot exercise my right to lien because the goods have already been taken away by the buyer. Clear ho gaya? First 3 points, the goods are in custody. Anita, that's absolutely right. After the price has not been paid, if the first 3 cases, if the goods are still in my possession, I can exercise the right to lien. If I've parted with the goods, I cannot exercise the right to lien. So Mansi Kumari, when we go to the study material, it will become more clear from there. But ma'am, goods shipped, I hope we have cleared this. What will happen if the seller has not informed about the part delivery? So Khushi, in case of part delivery of the goods, if seller has not informed, what are you asking? What he has not informed? So the simple story in part delivery was, I send you 600 bags of wheat or rice, whatever you want to assume. You accepted that, you pay me the price. If as a buyer, you told me that I'm not going to pay you the price, I am not going to give you the other part delivery. That is 400 bags, which was still pending. Now the seller will exercise his right to lien on those goods. Okay. Priyanka, right to stoppage in transit. I think this is what you answered in the previous one. That's correct. All right. So I think now we can just start. He has become unpaid seller. That's correct. Soumya. Correct. Samriti, Shiva. Those who just have given me the correct answer. Mr. Abdul, what do you want to ask in reservation of the right? I cannot understand your question clearly. So, Mr. MD, Azam, where you say that the payment are being made in installments and the delivery, if you're talking in installments, we just discussed that delivery in installments, buyer is not bound to make the accepted, but where the buyer is making the installments and he has agreed to make the payment in that way, then the seller is not becoming unpaid seller. The problem you have to understand, buyer, it has become impossible for the buyer to pay. He has become insolvent. Somebody was again asking the meaning of insolvent. Child, insolvent means that my liabilities, my assets, I don't have sufficient assets. मेरे पास इतना पैसा या इतने assets नहीं है कि मैं आपकी liabilities अपनी पूरी पे कर पाऊं. तो जब ऐसी सिचुएशन आती है जहां पे you don't have so much of assets and money to pay off your liabilities, then court declares you as insolvent. In such a case, even if the payment was to be made in installments, now you can't pay that. That's why the seller become an unpaid seller. Okay. I hope, Arnab, your query is also cleared with this point. Yes, Shiba, once the goods have gone away from you, you can exercise the right to stoppage in transit. So I think since many of you are asking, let's go to the study material also once. Let's see the things that we have covered. So this is your chapter of unpaid seller. Each and everything we have done related to your right to lien on the goods, but let us see it from the study materials. So the kind of charts, the kind of, these diagrammatical presentation is given in the study. I request all of you to practice making it in such a way. आप मेरे से पूछते हो ना मैम आसान तरीका क्या है लॉ पढ़ने का, हाउ टू रिमेम्बर लॉ. These are the road maps. These are the different flow charts. Colored pencils you should use. When I used to make my notes, I always used to make it with colored pens. You have to enjoy studying it. मजा आना चाहिए पढ़ने में. Neat handwriting. Handwriting really plays a very important role, children. आप मुझे बोलोगे हम गंदी हैंडराइटिंग में पेपर लिख कर आए हैं, बट पेपर सारा ठीक लिख कर आए हैं, तो आई एम सॉरी, मार्क्स कैन बी डिडक्टेड. You know why the marks can be deducted? Not because your writing is not good. Because I should understand also what you have written. If I can't understand your writing in a doctor's language, that I can't even read what you have written, then marks will be a little difficult to be given. So all these things, when I urge you to make notes, it helps you to practice how you actually have to write in your exams. So try making these kind of flow charts and diagrams in your notebooks ताकि आपको याद रहे. Now this we have already discussed. So these are the rights that we are discussing. Unpaid seller की definition आपको clear है. Same examples मैंने आपको भी कराए हैं जो study material में दिए हैं. अगर check represent करा, dishonor हो गया तो आप unpaid seller बन गए. आपने balance pay नहीं करा, amount pay नहीं करा तो आप unpaid seller बन गए. Section 46 दिया हुआ है यहाँ पे, analysis दिया हुआ है. आपने simple उसका right to lien में आ जाना है. Section 47 it says once you have decided, once you have come to know that buyer is not making you the payment, the goods were sold on cash or it was a credit sale or the buyer has become insolvent, the seller has the right to exercise the lien on the goods. That means he is not going to give the goods to the buyer. And section 48, which clearly talks about your part delivery, where unpaid seller has made part delivery, he can exercise the lien on remainder. वो 600 and 400 bags का example याद रख लो ना कि 400 bags के ऊपर हम lien exercise कर सकते हैं, unless such part delivery has been made to show the agreement to waive the lien. So if I have made that part delivery by showing that, if I have given the waiver, I told you, termination of lien. If it was a waiver from my side, then I cannot exercise the right to lien, but I still have the right in case of part delivery to exercise the lien on the remaining goods. When does he loses his right? Analysis of section 47, 48, 49 दिया हुआ है. आराम से आप एग्जांपल्स के साथ ये इजी लैंग्वेज में पढ़ सकते हो. देखो कैश से लिखा भी है, क्रेडिट से लिखा हुआ है. ठीक है. सो योर टर्मिनेशन ऑफ लियन. व्हेन डज इंसॉल्वेंसी की डेफिनेशन भी दे रहा है आपको. पर्सन इज सेड टू बी इंसॉल्वेंट हु सीज टू पे हिज डेट्स इन द ऑर्डिनरी कोर्स ऑफ बिजनेस और ही कैन नॉट पे द अमाउंट व्हेन इट बिकम्स ड्यू. Whether he has committed an act of insolvency or not, that is not important, but he is not able to make you the payment. Simple. And when does your lien comes to an end? When you have delivered the goods to carrier, when the buyer obtains the goods, when seller has waived his right or by estoppel. So I hope estoppel is now clear. So the unpaid seller having a lien does not lose his rights by the reason that he has obtained. So if you have taken any court's order for the price of goods, still you can exercise the right to lien on the goods. This is again the same example. A sold the car to B for 1 lakh and delivered to the railway authorities. Here his right to lien has come to an end. Now let's talk about the right to stoppage in transit, section 50 to 52. Very, very important and very, very interesting. So till now I was telling you I can retain the goods with me. Now I am going to tell you I can regain the possession of goods. Let's take a very interesting situation. I loaded the goods in that same example. Let's go to the same example from the car. We were selling this car to you. So I was loading this car to the railway authorities, and you told me that, yes, ma'am, now your right to lien has come to an end because you have parted with the goods. So now this Mr. P calls me up and he tells me, Harleen, ma'am, you're selling me this car, but I have been declared insolvent, or maybe due to certain reasons, I cannot pay this 1 lakh rupees to you. So don't you think, as a man of ordinary prudence, as a sensible person, I need to call the railway authorities and I need to stop the goods in transit and ask them to bring it back to me? Simple. This is known as right to stoppage in transit. The moment the seller comes to know that the buyer has become insolvent or the goods are in transit and something has happened because of which you are not going to give me my goods, I will simply call the transport agency. I will ask them to give my goods back. That is known as right of stoppage in transit. Thoda legal language bhi pad lete hain. It means while the goods are in transit, to regain. Now I am regaining the possession. Till the time I have not given the car to you, car is with me, I am retaining the possession. मेरे पास ही है, retain कर ली. मैंने आपको दे दी और अब वापस ली, तो regain करना. ठीक है? So now I am regaining the possession and I will retain it to with me till the price is paid. So right of stoppage in transit is no more mystery for all of you. The mystery is now out. You simply have to call the transport agency and you have to tell him that please bring my goods back. Now, what are the conditions? Only if these 4 conditions are fulfilled, then only you can exercise the right to stoppage in transit. Number 1, the seller must be unpaid. अगर आप मेरी पेमेंट कर चुके हो, तो क्या मैं राइट टू स्टॉपेज इन ट्रांजिट एक्सरसाइज करूंगी? फिर तो स्टोरी खत्म होगी ना. पहला चैप्टर, पहला पॉइंट हमने क्या पढ़ा? अनपेड होने चाहिए हो आप. आपकी पेमेंट मना हुई है या फिर आपकी पेमेंट हुई नहीं हुई है. Say for example, you have just required to deliver the goods, payment was already made. Then you don't exercise any right to lien and right to stoppage in transit. You become unpaid only when your payment is not made. So first condition is very much clear to all my students. Seller must be unpaid. Seller has parted with the possession. I have given the goods to the carrier or transport agency. Goods are in transit. Very, very interesting. अगर गुड्स पहुंच गए हैं, उसके पास गाड़ी चला रहा है, वो फिर नहीं ले सकती मैं वापस. How will I go to his home and take my goods back? Then I have to file a case against him. If such a thing happens now, when the goods are transit is complete and retaining of possession, regaining, both the things are not possible, then don't worry. Even if you're unpaid seller and the buyer has taken the goods from you, I can file a case against him. I will drag him to the court. Those are my rights against the buyer. I will use those rights. Here I am telling you what rights are available against the goods. So first we will utilize whatever rights are available against the goods. अगर ये तीनों rights भी खत्म हो जाते हैं, मेरे पास कोई option नहीं बचती, I will use my rights against the buyer. I will drag him to the court and recover my price money. ठीक है? So first condition, seller is unpaid. Goods, I have parted with the goods are in transit and the buyer has become insolvent. Very important. आपको पता होना चाहिए कि बायर नहीं पे करेगा बिकॉज ऑफ इंसॉल्वेंसी. इंसॉल्वेंसी इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट कंडीशन इन स्टॉपेज इन ट्रांजिट. ऐसे ही नहीं कि बस मन करा कि जी कोई और बायर आ गया हमारे पास, आप मेरी गाड़ी वापस ले आओ. अपनी मर्जी से कुछ नहीं कर सकते आप. लॉ है, वैलिड रीजन चाहिए भाई. कुछ भी डिसीजन लेने के लिए यू नीड वैलिड रीजन. So if the buyer has become insolvent, then only you will take all these steps. You will call the transfer authorities and bring the goods back. Now, how the stoppage is affected? This is again very interesting. लेना कैसे goods वापस? By taking the actual possession of goods. I will call the transport agencies and I will take the possession of goods. Or by giving a notice to the carrier or bailee, या फिर मैं उसे फोन कर दूंगी, हेलो सुनो उसको goods देना मत. ऐसे करूंगी ना, मुझे जैसे ही पता लगा बी पेमेंट नहीं करेगा तो मैं रेलवे अथॉरिटीज को, जो भी मेरा एजेंट है जो मेरे गुड्स लेकर जा रहा है, मैं उन्हें कॉल करूंगी. आई विल गिव देम द नोटिस दैट लुक प्लीज डोंट डिलीवर द गुड्स टू बी. ईदर यू होल्ड देम विद योरसेल्फ or I will go and take the goods back. All these expenses of redelivery are to be borne by the seller. Is it correct? You tell me, children, is it yes or no? Do I need to bear all these expenditures or buyer should bear it? So, do you think there is some problem in this sentence or you agree to what I have written? I have said all these expenses of redelivery. Redelivery means taking the goods back. So my dear children, you have to answer me. Now I'm making all the efforts to go and stop the train and you are go and stop the truck driver to take my goods back. So who has to bear all these expenditures of redelivery, buyer or seller? Thank you, Mansi. Thank you, Riddhi. Riddhi, that will be covered in the chapters in the topic that we're going to do right now. So you have to answer me. No worries, Sagrik. Even if you pay attention right now, you can understand what we are doing. We have just done right to lien, and now we are doing right to stoppage in transit. Riddhi, you can send your query once again. No problems. So Arnab, again, insolvency case, we have to do right to stoppage in transit. So Riddhi, she is asking that specifically once the goods have been given without unconditional appropriation. So child, listen carefully, all the 4 conditions, where is the condition? When the seller becomes unpaid. So I have to exercise my right to stoppage in transit. Now, मुझे पता लग गया मेरी payment नहीं होगी. Now, whether I have reserved the right to disposal or I have not reserved the right to disposal, I have the right to stoppage in transit. I can regain the position and keep it with myself until my full price is paid. Okay. Yes, Nimish Agarwal, we can use the rights against buyer also. Buyer should bear the expenses. Shiba Khan, you're wrong. All those who have written the seller will bear the expenses. That's absolutely correct. So this sentence is absolutely correct, children. I was just trying to confuse you. So thank you so much for staying awake. Obviously, seller is taking the goods back. He has to bear all the expenses of redelivery. Buyer तो बेचारा insolvent declare हो गया, वो आपकी goods ही नहीं ले रहा, वो इसका खर्चा कैसे भरेगा redelivery का? Seller अपने goods लेने जा रहा है. So all these expenses are to be borne by the seller. Very good, Sonu, Yajat, Raghu, Vardhan, Harshita, Lakshmi, Abdul, Pushpa, Priyanka, Vidya. All of your answer is correct. Simya, Sumit, Simran, Nikhil, Sarvesh, Bhumika, Piyush, Arnab, Sridhar, Ruchi, Pooja, Sanyam, Jain, Chandan, Tenzin, Ravi Singh, Riddhi. All of you are correct. Riddhi, you have written buyer should bear. That's wrong. Sakshi, Mansi, Manisha, you're correct. Kushi is correct. Chatan, Jaspreet, Kaur, Jyoti, everybody is correct. Sangeeta, Muhammad Ali. Yes, Om Prasad, both the things, study material and my notes, will be sufficient for your self-study. That's absolutely correct. Yes, Mr. Yash, we are doing the same topic, goods when they are in transit. So children, have you understood now the 4 conditions that have to be seen? First of all, my right to lien should have ended. The goods have been parted. They're already floating in the transit and the buyer has become insolvent. Then only I can exercise my right to stoppage in transit. Now let's understand another very important point, duration of transit. अब इसको भी थोड़ा सिंपल बना देते हैं. कब कहा जाता है कि goods are in transit? Number 1, when they are delivered to the carrier or any other bailiff for transmission until the delivery is made. So till the time buyer has not taken the goods, simple. I kept the goods in a train from Chandigarh. The goods were to reach Delhi to the buyer. The goods are still, say for example, the duration of train was for 3 hours. It started at 7 a.m. Train will reach the station at 10 a.m. Buyer will come and take the goods by 11 a.m. So from 7 a.m. till 11 a.m., the goods will be in transit. I can stop them anytime before the delivery is taken. Once the buyer comes to the station, take the delivery of the goods, then the right to stoppage in transit will get finished. So transit ends irrespective of the fact that the further destination is indicated by the buyer. So even if the destination can be indicated by the buyer also, then also they will be considered to be in transit. If the goods are rejected by the buyer, transit is not deemed to end. It says sometimes buyer reject the goods. So without reaching the goods to the buyer, he has sent his refusal, I don't want to buy the goods. Then the goods will still assume to be in transit and the seller can go and get the goods back. Where the courier or bailee wrongfully refuses to deliver the goods. Now, inhone galti kar di, transporter refuses or does something wrong to deliver the goods, then the transit comes to an end. If the goods are given to a ship chartered by buyer, now buyer has sent his own ship and the goods are coming and to be taken by the buyer himself. Here the transit has come to an end because we have directly given the goods to the buyer. And where part delivery has made, now you all know remaining goods may be stopped. So if I've already sent 600 bags of sugar and 400 bags are pending, so I can stop the part delivery of the goods, that is 400 bags. I can exercise my right to stoppage in transit. So these are 5-6 points which you have to remember for the duration of transit. Now let's go to the study material and all your wharf or finger जो queries आ रही हैं वो सब आपकी 2 मिनट में clear हो जाएंगी. Okay. Now section 50 to 52 is absolutely clear. It says, example number 5, I'm reading, children. A of Mumbai sold certain goods to B of Delhi. He delivered the goods to C, a common carrier, for the purpose of transmission. Before the goods could reach him, B became insolvent and A came to know about it. Now A can stop the goods by giving a notice of it to C. Who is Mr. C? He is the transporter who is taking the goods. So are the 4 conditions satisfied in this case? Number 1, A becomes unpaid seller. Payment was not yet made. He was an unpaid seller. Yes, ma'am, that is totally clear. Second, A has parted with the goods. Yes, he has delivered the goods to the carrier. So second condition is also clear. He has already parted with the goods. Third condition, are the goods in transit? Yes, they're already in transit. The goods are coming from Mumbai to Delhi and they are already with the transport agency with the common carrier. Has the buyer become insolvent? Yes, the buyer has become insolvent and seller has been informed about this. Therefore, A can stop the goods in transit. इस तरह से आपने पेपर में आंसर लिखना है. आपने सिंपल स्टोरी नहीं लिख देनी. ये तो facts of the case है. What I just did is the application of the act, application of section 50 to this particular transaction. So this is how you have to write. You have to write right to stoppage in transit. What is the meaning of right to stoppage in transit? First paragraph should be like this, that once the goods have been parted, he has the right to exercise the right to stoppage in transit if the buyer is not making the payment or if he has become insolvent. समझ आ गया? Second paragraph, you will write the facts of the case. This is what is happening in the current situation. This will be, children, your third paragraph. That is, now we conclude, since the seller is unpaid seller, he has parted with the goods and the goods are in transit from Mumbai to Delhi. Buyer has become insolvent, therefore he can exercise his right to stoppage in transit. How he will exercise it? By giving a notice of it to C. चाहे वो खुद ट्रेन जाकर ट्रक जाकर रुकवा ले या फिर ट्रांसपोर्टर को इन्फॉर्म कर दे, he can do so by exercising and by giving a notice to Mr. C. Clear? This is what we have discussed, how the stoppage in transit can be affected. Now let's go back to section analysis of section 50-51. So he has simply broken up the law that he has written over above. Now he's explaining you in the simple language that once my right to lien has come to an end, the seller has the right to regain. So children, this point is very, very important. It says, even if I've parted with the goods, I still have the right to take my goods back by regaining the possession, by exercising the right to stoppage in transit. And these are the 4 conditions which we just discussed that should be fulfilled in order to exercise this right. So now A at Delhi order goods of A at Mumbai. B at Delhi is ordering the goods and A consign and forward the goods to B. On arrival, they were taken to B's warehouse and left there. B refuses to take these goods and stop the payments. Here, the goods are still in transit and unpaid seller can take them. So every situation needs to be analyzed. Now, since he has taken the goods to B's warehouse and they were kept in the B's warehouse only, the buyer has still not taken the goods. So now if buyer refuses to take these goods and stops the payment, A still has the right to stop the goods in transit. I told you, the goods should have reached the buyer lawfully. So here the goods are still lying in the warehouse and they were left there. They were still in the transit. Therefore, the seller can go and take the goods back. The goods are deemed to be in transit when they are delivered to a carrier for the transmission to the buyer until the buyer or his agent. Simple. Duration of transit means jab tak buyer ne goods nahi liye, the goods will be in transit. All right. So these are the points which we have just discussed. So stoppage in transit, how it can be done? By taking the possession of goods or by giving the notice to the carrier. You will call the carrier guy not to deliver the goods to the buyer and you will go and take them back. So let's go through फटाफट से the differences between right of lien and right of stoppage in transit. Right to lien means right to retain the possession and right to stoppage means right to regain. You all know very well now. Retain करना अपने पास रख लेना, regain means वापस ले लेना. Seller should be in possession under lien while stoppage in transit. So the right to lien ends and the right to stoppage in transit begins. So here, when I'm taking the possession of the goods, I must be having the possession of the goods. However, in stoppage in transit, I can exercise only when I have given away the goods. And the buyer has not acquired. अगर buyer ने goods ले ही लिए, फिर तो दोनों lien खत्म हो जाएंगी ना, फिर तो मैं ले ही नहीं सकती वापस goods. Buyer should have not taken the possession of the goods. Right to lien can be exercised even when the buyer is not insolvent. So I told you, if you have failed to pay the amount, then also I can exercise the right to lien. But for right to stoppage in transit, insolvency condition is a must. I can only exercise right to stoppage in transit if the buyer has become insolvent. Now, section 53 is very, very important. The points of difference is बहुत simple है, read कर लेना. This is just a summary of what we have discussed. Now all the eyes and ears open. ध्यान से सुनना, अब ये बहुत important point है. Section 53. It is known as sub-sale or pledge by the buyer. Now what is going to happen over here? It is says that your right of stoppage and right to lien is not affected if the buyer is selling or pledging the goods unless the seller has given his acceptance to this. It says it is based on the principle that the second buyer cannot stand in a better position than the first buyer. Do you think the buyer, without making the payment, can sell my goods further? It says yes, if the seller has given the assent to it. अगर seller ने इजाजत दे दी, allow कर दिया, तब आपका buyer जो है, he can further sell the goods even if he has not made the payment. Let us understand clearly from the analysis of section 53, what is he trying to explain? It says right of stoppage is defeated if the buyer has transferred the document of title. Those who were asking me, ma'am, what happens if the document of title has gone? कहता है your right of stoppage in transit is defeated. It is finished. Let's go back to the very previous example. Let me come here with all of you. You remember where I had to load the goods from Chandigarh? I called the truck driver. I prepared 4 lorry receipts and I loaded the goods in a truck which were to be gone from Chandigarh to Delhi. So now the person in Delhi, he is standing and waiting for the truck driver to come. He will show him the lorry receipt and he will receive the goods. You remember I shared an example with you. Now this Mr. B, who is having my lorry receipt, he had another customer, Mr. C, who was coming to his shop every day and he was asking for those goods from him. And Mr. B said, look, my goods are already on their way in transportation and they're already on their way in transit. Please wait for some time. Mr. C said, no, I want the goods. So he said, I have these document of title to the goods. What are the document of title to the goods? The document of ownership. Remember? Chapter 1, Unit 1, document of title to goods ka matlab hota hai, these are the documents which shows the ownership of goods. So this Mr. B picked up and gave him the document of title to goods. Now B has already sold the goods while they were in transit to Mr. C. तो अब हुआ क्या था हमारी स्टोरी में? Now I told you that Mr. C can go and show this document of title to goods to the lorry driver and he can take the goods from him. यही ट्रांजेक्शन थी, मैंने आपको समझाया था. Even when the goods are in transit, if you have the document of title to goods in your hand, you can sell it further. It can be endorsed and sale can be made. ठीक है, ये आप सबने पढ़ा हुआ है. अब वो कह रहा है, can seller exercise his right to stoppage in transit? He says no. If the buyer has transferred the document of title or pledged the goods to a sub buyer in good faith and consideration, then my right of stoppage in transit will come to an end. So A sold certain goods to B of Mumbai and the goods were given to the railway authorities for transportation. So A is the seller, B is the buyer. Meanwhile, ये जो B है, जो मैंने आपको स्टोरी सुनाई है, ये C इसको बहुत तंग कर रहा था, कह रहा था मुझे अभी goods दे, अभी goods दे. तो B sold the goods while they were in transit. B sold the goods in transit to Mr. C. Now what happens? It says, although the right of stoppage is defeated if the buyer is selling, but here the buyer becomes insolvent. What has happened in this particular case? It says this is the particular exception. It says now the buyer has become insolvent. जिसने मेरा पैसा देना था, he has become insolvent. A can exercise his right to stoppage in transit. Now this seller, even if the goods have been further sold, even if Mr. B has sold the goods to Mr. C, I can still ask the transporter to give my goods back, even if he's having a document of title to the goods. All right. So let us see what are the exceptions where it says unpaid seller's right of lien and stoppage in transit are defeated. What are the cases where I won't be able to do it? It says the general rule is that my right to lien and stoppage in transit is not affected. So the general rule number 1 is this is your rule. So section 53 says this is my rule number 1, that even if my buyer is selling the goods further, if he becomes insolvent, write it down. Section 53 says even if the buyer sell the goods further or pledges the goods and such buyer becomes insolvent, the seller can still exercise his right of lien or stoppage in transit. समझ आ गया? So it says seller can still exercise his right to lien and stoppage in transit even if the buyer is selling the goods, unless the seller has assented. ये अभी हम important line समझेंगे. Secondly, वो कहता है there is an exception to this rule. Where are the cases where this unpaid seller's right to stoppage in transit comes to an end? Just understand where the seller has assented to such sale. अब वो कह रहे हैं अगर seller ने ही कहा है कि आप goods बेच दो. If the seller has assented means if the seller has accepted, seller has given the consent, where the seller has given the consent for the further sale, mortgage or disposal of the goods made by the buyer, there he cannot exercise his right to lien. Let us understand from the example. It says, ये example clear हो गया? सबको document of title to goods. Here the buyer is becoming insolvent. I can exercise my right to lien. So this is related to your rule. Section 53 का rule. Now we are doing 2 exceptions to this rule. कहाँ पे वो exercise नहीं कर सकता? Number 1, A entered into contract to sell the cartons in possession of a wharf finger. So I told you when the goods are loaded in a ship, they are kept in different godown, they are kept in wharf finger, they are kept in different drawers once they are loaded in the ship. So you can simply understand it is a kind of a godown where the goods are kept. And agreed with B that the price will be paid to A from the sale proceeds which we recover from the customers. तो A एक seller था who entered to contract to sell the cartons to B and he said that you can pay me the price after you sell it to the customers. अब transaction कैसे होनी थी? A has to give the goods to B. B will further sell the goods and whatever prize money he get, he will make the payment to the seller. B sold the goods to C and C duly paid to B. So B ने ऐसा ही करा, उसने goods खरीदे A से, उसने C को बेचे, C ने payment कर दी. But now B failed to make the payment to Mr. A. Can A exercise his right to lien? It says A wanted to exercise his right to lien and ordered the wharf finger not to make the delivery of goods to C. It was held in Mount DF Limited versus J&J Provisions Company case that the seller once has accepted to the resale of goods by the buyer. Now his right to lien has come to an end. अरे आपसे पूछकर तो मैंने आगे सेल करी है. You only as a seller you said that okay I will accept once you sell the goods to the customer, then only you pay me the money. Now I took your permission, I sold the goods to Mr. C. Now you are saying that don't give the goods to Mr. C. This cannot be done. So seller loses his right to lien if he has given the acceptance to any sale, mortgage and other disposition. समझ गए? So this is an exception to this rule. So rule 53 says otherwise buyer cannot sell the goods further if he has become insolvent. Seller still has the right to lien and right to stoppage in transit, but where the seller himself is consenting, वो खुद ही कह रहा है भाई तुम बेच देना, there he has waived off his right. His right to lien comes to an end. So एक छोटा सा केस था, इसको प्लीज याद रख लेना. Second is where document of title to goods has been transferred. Now here comes your document of title to goods, where I have given the goods to the buyer and buyer gives it further to any other person. Then again the proviso of subsection 1 stipulates as follows. It says if the last mentioned transferred is by sale, your right to lien comes to an end. If it is by way of pledge, then unpaid's right to stoppage will be exercised subject to the rights of pledgee. So in both the cases, he's telling you if the document of title has been transferred, here we understood, here he's giving the goods and the goods are still in transit, buyer becomes insolvent, you can exercise the right to stoppage in transit. But where document of title to goods have been given, there your in this last mentioned, if it is a sale, your right to lien and stoppage in transit will come to an end. Why? Because the documents have already been given to Mr. C. Here he is not talking about a document of title. Here he is just handing over the goods. He's simply talking about the transportation of goods and he becomes insolvent. Section 53 will be applicable. Your any sub-sale and pledge will not defeat my right. But I just now told you that there are two exceptions. Exception number one, where the seller himself is agreeing to such sale by the buyer to another buyer, his right to lien will come to an end. Point number two, where the document of title to goods have been given by the buyer to a further sub-buyer, then also your right to lien comes to an end. But he has given you another story by way of pledge. It says if it is sale, then your right comes to an end. However, if it is only pledging, then unpaid's right, lien and stoppage can be exercised subject to the rights of pledgee. Now you remember the meaning of pledge? It says if the buyer is simply pledging your goods, then whatever rights and duties as a pledgee will prevail, that can still be exercised by the seller. Clear? Right? So simply remember the general rule, children, and these two exceptions that we have discussed. Now let's go to section 54, that is the third right, right of resale. It says now what rights are available to the seller regarding the resale. It says if my right to lien has come to an end, or my right, in the absence of this right, unpaid seller right to lien and stoppage would not be of much use because these rights only entitled to take the goods back. But now he also wants the payment. This is a very valuable right, children, given to the unpaid seller. You said that we have been talking since morning that I can keep the goods to myself or I can take the goods back by stopping them in transit. But what happened? Will I keep the goods to myself only? क्या मैं उनको संभाल के रखी रखूंगी? Answer is no. I cannot simply keep them in my drawer. It says there are two cases in case of resale where the goods are of perishable nature. So maybe there were some apples or oranges which were to be transported from a seller to buyer. And if the buyer has not made the payment, here I can simply resell the goods. I don't even need to send any intimation to the buyer. मुझे बताने की भी जरूरत नहीं है buyer को, and I can simply dispose of the goods. So right to resale में, the third right that we are discussing, what are the rights available? Right to resale में, first right says that if the goods are of perishable nature, you can write down if the goods are of perishable nature, seller can resell the goods. Seller can resell the goods if his payment is not made. Seller can resell the goods if his payment is not made, even without giving any notice to the buyer. Even without giving any notice to the buyer. Second point, in any other case, the seller should give the notice to the buyer for reselling the goods. The seller must give the notice to the buyer for reselling the goods. Now, what actually happens is, it says, generally, it is not compulsory. So this is sub-sale and pledge example we have just done. You can simply read it from my notes when it's written in a simpler language. Okay. ये हमने सारा भी डिस्कस कर लिया. Right to pledgee, right to resale, consent has been given, right to resale पे आ जाते हैं. Now it says with the goods are of perishable nature, you don't need to give the notice to the buyer. You can simply pick up and sell the goods because your prize money has not been made, so you can sell the goods. But in any other case, it says if he fails to give the reasonable time to pay, then the seller can recover the difference between the contract price and resale price and retain the profits if sold for a higher price. Now, what does it mean? Say, for example, there were certain goods, there was bags of cement lying with the seller and buyer did not come to take the goods. So I exercise my right to lien and the buyer has not made me the payment. So I exercise my right to lien on the goods and I kept the 100 bags of cement with myself. But since I sent a notice to the buyer, now number one, perishable commodities कोई eatable है जो खराब हो जाती है उसमें तो मुझे notice भेजने की जरूरत नहीं थी, मैंने सेल कर दिया, apples and oranges वाला example. Second example है हम cement का बात कर रहे हैं, 100 bags of cement. So I sent a notice to the buyer that look, your goods are still lying with me and within a reasonable time, please come and pick up the goods. And now if the buyer did not come and pick up the goods, so say for example, I sold each bag for rupees 100 per bag. It was rupees 100 per bag. I sold it for rupees 70. So now don't you think that I had to bear a loss of rupees 30? Now this buyer did not come to take the bags of cement, and all these 100 bags of cement, which were of say assume for rupees 100 per bag, I had to sell it for rupees 70. Now it says, first point, I can recover this loss money, whatever is the difference between contract and resale price. So contracted price was 100 and I'm reselling it for 70. So this 30 rupees loss I can recover from the original buyer. Similarly, if it is for rupees 100 and I'm selling it for rupees 120, say I was a lucky customer, I have got a customer for rupees 120. So now this profit of rupees 20 that I have made, I can retain this profit for selling the goods at a higher price. So simply understand, number one, in perishable commodities, I don't need to make any information or notice to the buyer. I can resell the goods. Point number two, in any other case, I have to give the notice to the buyer. Now I can recover the loss and I can retain the profits only if I have given the notice to the buyer. Let's assume another example. I failed to give the notice. मैंने buyer को बताया ही नहीं और चुप करके उसके जो goods थे वो बेच दिए. Now I cannot recover the loss from him and I also need to pay this profit of rupees 20 to the original buyer. So there are two separate cases. If I have informed the buyer, I can recover the losses and I can retain the profits. But if I have not informed the buyer, then I cannot recover the lost money and I also need to give him the profit. Samajh aa gaya? This is the rights of resale, where the buyer has, it says when is the condition applicable? When the unpaid seller who has exercised his right to lien, he needs to resell the goods. Subsequent buyer obtains a good title. So he is allowed to resell the goods. It is expressly reserved the seller may resell the goods on any of the buyer's default. तो कोई भी buyer गलती करता है उसकी payment नहीं करता, so we have the right to resell the goods. Now let us quickly go the right against the goods we have done. So these are the rights of unpaid seller against the buyer. So where I was telling you repetitively that if you don't pay if you don't have the right to lien or right to stoppage in transit and you really feel that you want to drag the buyer to the court, then you can also file a case against the buyer. All these examples are very clearly given in your study material. Try to read all the examples which are given in a study material. It says, what all rights do I have against the buyer? Number one is suit for price. So I can file a case and I can ask him, I can drag the buyer to the court and I will ask him that he is wrongfully neglected and paying the price for the contract money. Now he can sue him for the price. So he'll simply file a case under section 55. He will simply file a case and he will ask him that either you take the goods and pay the money or you have to be paying me for whatever amount that we have agreed has to be paid. Both the cases, although the property has not been passed, the goods had not been appropriated. So even if the property and the goods has not been passed, then also he can file a case for the price money. Second is suit for damages for non-acceptance. When we started with the chapter, I told you where the buyer neglects or refuses means he's doing a breach of contract. Seller can sue him for the damages. What is the meaning of damages? Section 73 or those ICAI versus Baxendale versus all those case laws will become applicable. Okay, for applicable of the measurement of damages. So whatever damages the seller has suffered, he can recover from the buyer. Repudiation of contract. So what happened? He can also repudiate the contract before the due date. This is known as anticipatory breach of contract. So children, you have already studied. One is actual breach of contract. One is anticipatory. So if I had to send you the goods from 1st Jan till 5th January, I had the time to deliver the goods. But on 3rd January, you came to me and you told me that, look, seller, we don't want the goods. So now the seller has the right to resign the contract then and there. Repudiate means to put an end to the contract. So I can either put an end to the contract before the due date or I will wait for the specific performance and I can sue you on the due date. So this is the case of anticipatory breach of contract. And the last one is filing a case for interest money. So if you have not paid me the price, so whatever is the difference, I took a case against you, and whatever is the difference between the price of the goods from the date when the payment became due, I can also recover that interest money from the buyer. So these are the particular 4 cases for filing a case against the buyer. So rights against the goods means right to lien, stoppage in transit, and right to resale. Where the property has been passed, where property has not been passed, there was an additional right, that is right to withholding delivery. I hope we discussed about the right to withholding delivery as well, wherein I told you it is only an agreement to sell and I have not parted with the goods, then I can just keep the goods to myself also. Somebody was asking, ma'am, where right to withholding delivery is given. I will show you that as well. So it simply tells you that where property in the goods has passed to the buyer, you have these 3 rights, and when the property has not passed, then only additional right is, that is withholding delivery, means now I will not give you the goods. And the rights which we just did right now, these are the rights against the buyer. I can file a case for the damages, interest, and price money as well, and you can file a case against the buyer to pay you the price money. Children, now the last topic for the day which is left, let's cover it as well. I'm just trying to show you the withholding delivery. A small paragraph is given over here, you can just read it. After right to resell, this is known as quasi lien. So this is what I want you to do. So where the property in the goods has not been passed to the buyer, it says unpaid seller, in addition to the remedies available, he has a right to withhold the delivery. This is also known as quasi lien. So if any time examiners ask you what is the mean, I told you don't leave a single line from the study material. कुछ भी छोड़ना नहीं है, सब कुछ पढ़कर जाएंगे हम study material में से. तो मतलब क्या है कि अगर property in the goods नहीं pass हुई है, means it is an agreement to sell. Where the sketcher example we have done, I have made all those shoes for you. You refuse to pay me the price. Now I can withhold the delivery of the goods. This right is similar to the right to lien, and it is also known as quasi lien of the goods. So what I'm exercising a quasi lien, means I will not give you the goods unless and until you agree to pay me the price. Then only the sale will be made. Now let's go to the last topic of today's lecture, that is remedies of buyer against the seller. So here he is talking about the breach of contract by the seller. पहले हमने बात करी कि सेलर ने अगर पेमेंट नहीं करी है, अगर बायर ने पेमेंट नहीं करी. Now we are talking if seller refuses to give the goods. If he repudiates the contract, if he deliver non-conforming goods, then the buyer can reject and revoke the acceptance. So simply law says, buyer की तो आपने गलती देख ली, तो seller के पास कितने सारे rights है if he becomes unpaid seller. But if the seller does any of these mistakes, that is, he fails to deliver the goods or cancels the contract, if seller commits any breach of contract, similarly the buyer also has the following rights. Number 1, the damages for non-delivery. He will say that you promised me to deliver 100 bags of sugar, and because you did not deliver, I could not sell it further. So whatever loss he's suffering, whatever damages he's having, he can file a case. Suit for specific performance. If you remember, under Indian Contract Act, we must have studied that a specific singer was hired, or maybe a Shah Rukh Khan was only taken as an actor to act for that movie. So if there was any such specific performance which was required to be done, say for example, the buyer has made a contract with you that I want a particular antique painting, and he has already made the payment to you, and now if you fail to deliver that antique painting, which is only available with you as a seller, I can file a case against you and I can request the court for the specific performance of the contract. Then court will ask the seller that notice should be given that you have to perform and complete this contract. Second is suit for breach of warranty. So children, you all remember any breach of warranty, if it has been done related to your undisturbed possession or encumbrances or trade or customer, it is your business to deal in a particular quality. It has to be, the goods have to be as per those quantity and quality. Then if any breach is happening, the buyer can file a case against you. Suit for anticipatory. Same anticipatory breach here is also happening if the seller before the due date ditches you or breaks the promises and fails to fulfill the promise, then also the buyer can drag him to the court and he can file an action. And suit for interest means whatever is the difference in between the prize money on the date of contract, he can take an action against him. So this example which they have clearly given, wherein the sale was to be made for 1050 per pair and 1100 was the rate for reselling it further. Now the buyer has suffered a loss because the goods were not delivered. Therefore, this is the price money difference, 50 per pair. He can recover it from the seller. Where the contract is for specific goods, I just gave you an example. He can take an order from the court for the specific performance. Say, for example, there was a rare painting of Mughal period, and before the due date, A is refusing to sell. B will take an action against him, and he will compel him, court will compel him to perform the contract. All right, children. So here we come to an end, and the last topic, auction sale, is very, very simple. Section 64, since we have not left a single topic, so there is ko bhi kyun chhodna. Let's quickly wind up with the revision of auction sale. So what is the meaning of auction sale? When I'm selling, it is a mode of selling the property by inviting bids publicly, and property is sold to the highest bidder. So say, for example, I have antique paintings over here, and I have invited the bidders that please come, and whosoever gives the highest bid will be sold this. And how the sale gets complete? By the fall of hammer. So when I sent it to the newspaper advertisement for auction sale, it was invitation to offer. Now, when you come and you give the biddings, that is, you're making an offer for the purchase of the commodity, and on the fall of hammer, acceptance is given, and this is how the auction sale is set to get complete. So it is basically selling the property by form of bids publicly. Public has been invited, and whosoever gives the highest bid will be sold the goods. Now, what are the legal rules? Section 64. Many a time examiner tries to give you a straight away question that explain the rules and provisions regarding auction sale. 6 नंबर का क्वेश्चन आ जाता है, तो इसको लर्न कर लेंगे और एज इट इज लिख कर आ जाएंगे. बट लर्न करने के लिए समझना जरूरी होता है, तो हम वो फटाफट से समझ लेते हैं. The first point is where the goods are sold in lots. So for example, I have decided to sell you different kind of steel material, and there were 100 bags of steel. So now I'm making separate lots for packets, bags of steel. So it says iron rods. I'm selling you first lot of steel in first separate contract of sale. Say, for example, there are 100 iron rods. Those were to be sold. So I've decided to make it a lots of 20. So when I'm selling you first lot of 20, that will be a separate contract of sale. Another lot of 20 will be a separate contract of sale. तो वो कहता है, whenever the sale is put up in lots, मतलब different अगर आपने categories करी है, तो हर lot को एक separate contract of sale माना जाएगा. It will be considered as each lot will be, when the goods are divided in lots, means the goods are divided into different categories, it will be considered as a separate contract of contract of sale. How the contract gets completed, you all have understood by fall of hammer. Remember in the previous example where the fall of hammer, the painting only got broken. So it was discussed the seller will be bearing the loss because the property has not been passed. But once on the fall of hammer, the property has passed to the buyer. Buyer has to bear the expenses. Whosoever gives the highest bid is considered as the person who will be buying. Right to bid may be reserved. Now it says sometimes the right to bidding is expressly or by on behalf of seller is reserved, but not otherwise the seller or any other person on his behalf may bid. So कहते right to bid may be reserved. At times he can expressly give the right to bidding can be taken by any other person, but seller himself cannot bid. आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि आपके goods है तो आप खुद थोड़ी ना खरीदोगे. You always need to have a seller and buyer in a transaction. So seller himself cannot bid for his own goods. And where the sale is not notified by the seller, it says if any such case is happening where the seller is not allowing, then the contract becomes voidable. If the sale is not notified by the seller, means seller has not given the permission for such kind of sale, then whatever bids the buyer are making, it will be considered as a fraudulent transaction. The contract becomes voidable. The reserve price, you can write down, children, this is the minimum price beyond which, sale cannot be made. So say, for example, if I'm selling you those iron rods in an auction sale, तो मैंने minimum price अगर कह दिया कि 30,000 एक lot में होना ही चाहिए. So whatever bidding, whatever price you are setting to me, it should be above 30,000. Pretended bidding means आपने seller ने अपने बंदे खड़े कराए हुए हैं. He has asked some people that just stand in the crowd of buyers and you give up pretended bidding just to increase the price money. So in such a case also the sale becomes voidable. So in both the cases where the sale is not notified by the seller or any person is trying to do pretended bidding just to increase the price money, then in these cases the contract will become voidable. So example 13 says P sold the car by auction. It was knocked down to Q, who was only allowed to take it by giving a check for the prize money and signing an agreement that the ownership will not pass until check is clear. So this was a directly case where it was held that the ownership will get transferred only when the check is clearing, because it's a conditional payment. There can be doubts that the check does not get cleared. So now till the check was cleared, Q sold the car to R. It was held property was passed on the fall of M. Therefore, R can get a good title. Both sale and sub-sale are valid in favor of Q and R. Now, what is he trying to explain? It says, although the ownership was not passed, the payment was still pending. In the meanwhile, he sold the car to R. So is it a valid sale? It says, yes, in the fall of hammer, the auction sale was said to be complete. So ownership in case of an auction sale, once the fall of hammer has happened, then only the ownership gets transferred. Even if certain conditions related to payment are pending, then also the buyer has the right to sell the goods further to another person. Because we just understood if the seller has consented. So on the fall of hammer, I have already consented that yes, you can make the sale further. With this note, we come to an end to our chapter of unpaid seller as well. So last 4-5 minutes, I'll just take up your queries also. I hope you have understood, but a revision of the entire syllabus is must. Mayur, if seller becomes insolvent, then what remedies are available with the buyer? That will become applicable. How seller can recover loss? Nimish Agarwal, by dragging him to the court. Court will take a decision regarding the measurement of damages. Proviso, Vidya, proviso means certain sections are given and certain provisions related to those sections are given. You need not need to learn all these sections and provisions, but you should remember what is written in the law. Sections are not mandatory. Thank you, Manisha. Thank you so much, Dhairya. Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Samriti. Nilami. Yes, auction sale is known as Nilami, Samriti. That's correct. Thank you, Vidya. Thank you so much, Sandeep Kumar. Thank you, Nimish. Thank you, Mansi. Bid means the pricing that you are giving for that prize money, bidding. जैसे 10,000, 20,000 नीलामी जैसे आप लिख रहे हो ना, तो उसका जो प्राइस आप देते, that is known as bidding. Thank you, Nimish Agarwal, for writing such a nice comment. Thank you so much. Even I enjoy teaching all of you. In case of resale, Gopal Krishnan is asking who will bear the loss and profit in case of resale of perishable goods. So when the goods are perishable, no notice is required to be given and law is silent regarding the loss and profits. But we generally assume the second rule prevails. If you have informed the buyer, you can recover the loss and you can retain the profits. But if you have not informed the buyer, then you cannot recover any loss money. Okay? Abdul, I hope your point is also clear. Shambhi, where you're asking, I can't take the goods back and further file a case. So where the right to lien and stoppage in transit comes to an end, you can file a case against the buyer. You can utilize your rights against the buyer. H. Om Prasad, document of title to goods, where I told you lorry receipt, 4 lorry receipts are made. The original one is already given to the buyer. That is how he was selling the goods further. Suman Biswas, you're still asking right to lien ka matlab kya hota hai? We have come to an end of today's session. So I hope you have understood by now. Maybe previously you were asking. So right to lien means right to retain the possessions. If this water bottle, I have promised to sell this water bottle to Suman and he did not pay me the price. So I will keep the water bottle to myself. That means I'm exercising the right to lien. I will retain the possession. I will not give you the goods. So right to lien का हिंदी में मतलब होता है goods अपने कब्जे में रख लेना. Seller आपको goods नहीं देगा जब तक आप payment नहीं देते. So, Soumya, if the buyer refuses, or who is asking, Abdul is asking, if the buyer refuses to take the delivery of the goods, then the remedies that we have just done become applicable. Yes, Gautam, it is the expenses to be borne by the seller in case of right to stoppage in transit. Sections are not compulsory, Soumya. You can write them in your own language. Yes, you can absolutely. Yes, Pushpa, that is a very valid example. Ridhima, ma'am, in the first exception of right to buy the stoppage in transit. So Ridhima Gupta, you simple have to remember once you have parted with the goods, your right to lien comes to an end. And the second right which is available to you is right to stoppage in transit if the buyer has become insolvent. No, it is not compulsory, Ridhi. I just told you sections are not compulsory. गंगा इज आस्किंग व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ फॉल ऑफ हैमर. तो जब आप सेल होती है ऑक्शन सेल में, तो वो एक हथौड़ा उन्होंने हाथ में हैमर पकड़ा होता है, तो वो ठक करके सेल में कंप्लीट करते हैं. सो व्हेन दे ड्रॉप द हैमर लाइक दिस, दैट मींस यस इट्स डन. सो वंस कंफर्मेशन इज गिवन बाय फॉल ऑफ हैमर, सेल इज सेड टू बी कंप्लीट. Riddhima, are you asking about exception to section 53? Your question is not very clear. Miss Talat, thank you so much. Simran Kaur, we will do the descriptive questions also. Any other doubts, children, are you having? So in the exceptions, those who are asking, Miss Riddhima, that particular exception you're asking, I told you, where the seller himself allows the buyer to sell the goods to further, to someone else. There, his right to lien and stoppage in transit comes to an end. So two exceptions we have discussed. One is where document of title to goods get transferred to another person. Then also I cannot exercise my right to lien and stoppage in transit. And second, where seller himself is allowing, जैसे मैंने बोला कि आप मुझे payment ही उससे करना by getting the sale proceeds from the customer. So I have given you the permission to sell the goods further. Then my right to lien comes to an end. Yes, Dhairya, that's absolutely correct. Yes, Soumya, if required, you can learn the sections, but never write a wrong section. Yes, Vidhi, we were able to complete the chapter on time. That's good. So, children, I hope you enjoyed today's session. And Mr. Sameer saying, again, if the payment is to be made by bills of exchange or promissory note till the credit period is given, you cannot exercise the right to lien. Only after the expiry of credit period, if still the payment is not made or the bill get dishonored, then the seller can exercise his right to lien on the goods. All right, students, it's already 1:10. Thank you so much. I am glad that you find it easy. Mr. Sumit Dhar is still asking something from Unit 1. He says, ma'am, what is the difference between just in rem and just in personam? So last query I'm taking of yours is, just in rem means I have rights of the whole world against this product. So there's a small gun lying in front of me. Always we take this bottle. So this is a small gun which is lying in front of me. So if I have purchased this, I have become buyer, I have become owner. Now I have all the rights with this toy gun. I can shoot with it, I can play with it, I can dump it, I can throw it. That means I get just in rem. I get all the rights of the world against this particular gun. But if it was an agreement to sell, then I only gives the right in persona. Means if you were the seller and you had to sell me something, and now if you fail to do that, then I only have the rights against this particular seller, and I can only file a case against with him, and I can recover my goods. Then I don't get all the rights for that particular commodity. All right, and thank you so much. I really feel so happy when you write me, ma'am. You have made it so easy and it's crystal clear. Thank you, Chandan, Harshita, Nafisa, Mayur, Dhairya, Akshneel, Sonil, Yadav, Sameer, Riddhi, Sumit, Ganga, Pushpa. Thank you so much, all of you. Karishma, Sambhi. All right, students. So very goodbye to all of you. Section 54, Akshneel, don't get worried. The only exception you have to remember that exception where the seller has given his consent and document of title to goods, your right to stoppage and liability gets defeated. That much is sufficient, which you have written. All right, goodbye, children. Have a nice Sunday evening and see you all on Tuesday with a new chapter, Indian Partnership Act. Goodbye.